Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, and welcome back to today's Daf, which is Eruvin Daf Kufay. We are on the bottom of Kuf Daled, 3 lines from the bottom, and resuming our discussion where Shmuel tells us a chiddush that if one brings a sheretz into the Beis HaMikdash, the actual creature itself, a dead lizard, which is a source of tumah, if he brings it into the Beis HaMikdash, he's not chayiv because we learn it from a pasuk that this Isser min HaTorah only applies to something which can become Torah in a mikvah as opposed to a sheretz, which doesn't have that ability, and therefore bringing that into the Beis HaMikdash does not result in chiyuv, and likewise there's no obligation min HaTorah to remove it from the Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara attempted to connect this halacha with a machlekes found in the Mishnah, and perhaps that forms the basis of that machlekes, and the Gemara discounted that connection. Now the Gemara proceed to attempt to connect this halacha of Shmuel to the next machlekes Tanoim found in our Mishnah. Says the Gemara 3 lines from the bottom at the end of that 3rd line, Ella rather kahani Tanoi, perhaps the other machlekes Tanoim found in our Mishnah is based on this very question of whether there's a chiyuv min HaTorah for one who brings a sheretz into the Beis HaMikdash. Which machlekes are we referring to? The Snan we learned in our Mishnah, Meichin Metzion Oisoi v'chulu. So we're speaking about removing the sheretz from the Beis HaMikdash on Shabbos, despite the fact that it's muktzah. The Chachamim discounted and suspended their shvus of muktzah, ein shvus of Mikdash, to allow removal of the sheretz. Now, where within the Beis HaMikdash was the sheretz found? We know that there are various degrees, levels of kedusha within the Beis HaMikdash itself. There's the heichel, there's the azara. So, where within the Beis HaMikdash does this justify overriding muktzah? Where was the sheretz found? And we had the machlekes where Rabbi Yehuda says in the heichel, in the ulam, but if it's found in the azara, that doesn't justify muktzah. Leave it there until Motzei Shabbos. Whereas Rabbi Kiva maintains that even in the azara, you meant to remove it, despite the fact that it's muktzah. Says the Gemara, perhaps the basis of their machlekes is actually linked to Shmuel's chiddush. Ma'ila b'kamiflik, perhaps the basis of the machlekes is as follows: the Manda Omar Mazor Eloi, the shita that says that you cannot remove it from the azara on Shabbos. Kol Savra, he holds hamachnes sheretz l'mikdash pater. If a person brings a sheretz into the Beis HaMikdash, he's pater. And actually, not only is he pater, but there's no chiyuv min HaTorah to even remove it. Therefore, he holds that removal of a sheretz doesn't justify, doesn't override the muktzah concern. Therefore, if it's an azara, leave it alone. As Rashi explains, but if it's found in the heichel, ulam, it's closer to the kodesh HaKadoshim, there's an increased presence of shechina there. And mishum kavod shechina, we allow the removal of the sheretz despite the fact that it's muktzah. But otherwise, if it's out in the azara, where this factor isn't really there so strongly, Chacham did not allow removal of the sheretz and override the Isser of Muktzah. That explains the Shita of Rabbi Shimon ben Nanas, who says, if it's Nazara, leave it alone. So he holds like Shmuel, that a machnes sheretz l'mikdash is pat. However, Umad Omar B'kula Azara, the Shita of Rabbi Kiva, who says that even if it's Nazara, you remove it on Shabbos, we override Muktzah to allow removal of the sheretz, because Savar Chayv holds that if one brings a sheretz into the Beis HaMikdash anywhere, even the azar, is chayiv, and likewise is a chiyuv, a biblical obligation to remove that sheretz, and therefore it justifies tampering with muktzah on Shabbos. So perhaps the statement of Shmuel is actually dependent on this machlekes Tanoim. Says the more actually not. Rabbi Yehuda, no. All agree perhaps that if one brings a sheretz in the Beis HaMikdash, is chayiv. Likewise, there's an obligation to remove it, min HaTorah. The machlekes here is a very focused and specific machlekes. The question is, a tumah which is found in the azara, does that justify muktzah removal? Does that justify doing an Isra on Shabbos? So since the azara really contains a lower level of kedusha, yeah, you're not meant to bring something in there. You're meant to remove it as well. But if it's on Shabbos and it would involve muktzah, perhaps removal from the azara doesn't justify muktzah. That's the question here. It's a very local question. Actually, both Shitas sourced their opinions from the very same pasuk, which says, "Vayavoya Kohanim lepnima beis Hashem." The Kohanim entered inside the Beis Hashem letar, to cleanse it from the Avodah Zarah. This was in the time of Chizkiah. They were trying to cleanse the Beis Hamikdash from the Avodah Zarah, which was introduced by his father Achaz, who was a Rasha. So they went in there to clean up. Vayitzius kla tumah. They removed all the tumah, which is the Avodah Zarah, and the offerings, which are all matame. Asher motzu beichal Hashem, which they found inside. Where did they transport the Avodah Zarah l'chatzar beis Hashem, out to the chatzar beis Hashem, which is the Azorah, the courtyard. So this was done by the Kohanim. So the first phase, removing from the inside out to the chatzar, was accomplished by the Kohanim. But once it got there, the second phase was picked up by the Levim. By Kabbalah HaLevim, L'hoitzi L'Nachal Kidron, they received, and they took it out to Nachal Kidron, Chutza, out, to get rid of the Avodah Zarah. So, despite the fact that there was an abundance of Avodah Zarah, lots of work, the Kohanim refrained from getting involved past that first phase. Yeah, they went inside and brought it out, but once it got to that point, they waited for the Levim to do the rest of the job. Says the Gemara, okay, this forms the basis of our machlokes in the Mishnah. How? Mar Savar, Mon Jun holds, this is Rav Shimon ben Anas, he says, look, midishtani ba'azor b'levim, the fact that we see there was a changeover, it was a different reference to the Tumah when it was in the Azorah. The Kohanim no longer were involved. Only the Levim got involved. Apparently, the Tumah within the Azorah is not so stringent. Tumah ba'azorah leka. The Tumah within the Azorah is not so chomer. It's not considered to be such a severe affront to the kedusha of the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore we waited for the Levim to take over. The Kohanim wouldn't get involved because a kohen is not meant to get tummy, right? So, yeah, to take it from the heichal, which has a high degree of kedusha, yeah, the Kohanim did it. But once it got to the Azorah, the Kohanim backed off and allowed the Levim to take over. So apparently, a tumah in the Azorah doesn't justify doing an Isser. Therefore, we didn't allow the Kohanim to continue their involvement. And likewise, in our case, we don't override the Isser Muktzah in order to remove the Tumah from the Azorah. So this is a source of Rav Shimon ben Anas. Umar Savar. However, the other Shita, Rav Kiva holds, Ad heicha delei efsheh b'levim mafki Kohanim. Yeah, where the Levim had no access, meaning within the Eichel where the Levim were not meant to go, of course, the Kohanim had to get involved and bring the Avodah Zarah out. There was no alternative. Hasha the efsheh b'levim, but now once it's in the Azorah where the Levim have access, and they can go ahead and interact with the Avodah Zarah and transport it from the Beis Hamikdash, Sulei Matami Kohanim. The Kohanim no longer are meant to be involved. So since there's a viable option, Levim can do it. So why would that justify the Tumah for the Kohanim? Of course the Levim should do it, not the Kohanim. As opposed to our case where you have a Tumah sitting in the Azorah. It's meant to be removed. There's no reason to leave it there till Matzah Shabbos. Leave it there throughout Shabbos? Of course not. Of course you're meant to remove it, even on Shabbos, even at the expense of Muktzah. As opposed to there where you had a viable option. You had the Levim waiting to do the rest of the job. So perhaps it wasn't so convenient. It took a bit longer because there were less people. But since the job could be accomplished by them, it didn't justify. It wouldn't allow for the Kohanim to continue interacting with the Tumah. Perhaps let's see Rashi inside here, starting from the top line of the Amud. Sigmar originally figured that the machlekes in the Mishnah is related to that question of whether there's a chiv, if one brings a sheretz in the Beis Hamikdash, and Rabbi Yehuda responded, actually it's not linked to that question. Or Rabbi Yehuda, leaning Yuli, when it comes to the question of bringing something into the Beis Hamikdash, Kuli Alma all agree hamachnes sheretz chayiv. Of course, if you bring a sheretz to the Beis Hamikdash, you're chayiv. Ulini lahoitzi hanimtza bazar b'Shabbos by krab pligi. However, when it pertains to the question of whether or not you meant to remove the sheretz, despite the fact that it's muktzah, to remove it on Shabbos from the Azorah, yeah, that is the basis of the machlokes, and it's sourced in the following pasuk, which says, "Vayevayu kahanim pnim beis Hashem beichel." Vayitzim atuma, which tuma was it? Avodah zara. V'takru v'seha, its offerings. Shem etam ba'oil, which impart tuma even through oil. So these things were tummy items. The kahanim went in there, despite the fact that these things are tummy, and extracted it from the heichal and brought it out to the lechatzar beis Hashem, to the azara. And once it got there, the Levim took over. But the Kehanim would not engage further, would not become Tameh. There wasn't another group of Kehanim involved in the second phase. Although apparently they need lots of people to do the job. And by not allowing Kehanim to be involved, it slowed down the process. We need lots of people to be involved. Some would bring out from the Hechel Azara, and others would transport from the Azara out to the Nachal Kidron. Despite the fact that there was a need for lots of people here, Levim hu dimitamen v'lo Kehanim. We insisted that only Levim would interact and become Tamei, but the Kehanim stayed out of it. So this is found in the pasuk. The question is how to analyze the pasuk. Says the Gemara, Ben Ana Savar, Rashi, Ben Ana Savar, Medi Ishtini Tumas Azara. Since apparently there was a switchover in the way we related to the Tumah. And once it got to the Azara, the Kehanim backed off, and only the Levim continued with the job. Shema Mina, apparently we learn from here, when there's a Tumah in the Azara, which is an area which has a lower degree of Kedusha, Le'mafkina, Le'bavera, we can't go ahead and remove the Tumah by doing an Isser, such as the Kohanim being involved, or such as Muktzah on Shabbos. Elamadrina and Atera. Rather, we prefer doing it in a permissible manner. Ubishabbos nami ledachin shvusim. Likewise on Shabbos, we don't override the shvus of Muktzah. So that's the source of this shita of Bananas, who holds, don't remove it on Shabbos, wait till Matzah Shabbos. Tumah bazara lesa. So apparently the Tumah in the Azara is not a concern. Kalaymar, what he means to say is, when we have Tumah in the Azara, it is not regarded so stringently and doesn't justify overriding Muktzah. So that's the shita of the Bananas. Whereas Rabbi Kiva holds, look, in that case, in the case of the pasuk there, it was a viable alternative. So the first phase the Kohanim need to do out of necessity, but once it got to the Azara, where the Levim could just continue the process, then of course they're meant to do it. So in the Heichal Delay Efsha Beheichal Levim, the Heichal Levim are not meant to enter. I feel Kohanim Asir Leme'al Ella Avoida. Even Kohanim don't have access to the Heichal only when it comes to Avoida. So when it comes to the Heichal or certainly the Kodesh HaKadoshim, even a Kohen doesn't really have access only if it is necessary, required for the Avoida. So certainly Levim are not meant to go there, and therefore that phase was accomplished by the Kehanim, as opposed to the second stage. So once it got to the Azara, we don't allow the Kehanim to become Tamei. Levim, because it can be done and accomplished perfectly well through the Levim. So that's when it comes to the scenario described in the pasuk. However, by us, when we find Tumah in the Azara, what are you suggesting? Leave it alone. Leave it till Matzah Shabbos. But to leave it till nightfall? Of course not. And therefore, Rabbi Kiva maintains that even a Tumah in the Azara justifies Muktzah, so one can go ahead and remove it, despite the fact that the sheretz is Muktzah. So in conclusion, we find a sheretz in the Azara. Rav Shimon ben Anna says, leave it alone till Matzah Shabbos. He holds that, we actually see from that pasuk, that a tumah within the Azara is not considered to be such a severe state of tumas migdash, and doesn't justify doing an isser, and doesn't justify muktzah. Rabbi Kiva maintains it certainly does. So when you have a viable option, such as in the case of the Levim, who are going to transport it, then certainly you're meant to leave it for them. But in our case, where it's either removing it or leaving it till Matzah Shabbos, of course you're meant to remove it on Shabbos, and that is more important, takes priority over the Isser Muktzah. Continues the Gemara. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in the Braisa, Kol Nechnosin Behechal. All are allowed to go into the Hechal for the following purposes. livnois, to build, l'sakein, to repair the infrastructure, or to remove tumah which is present there. U'mitzvah b'kahanim, we prefer a kohen to do the job. A kohen belongs there, that's the makam avoda. So preferably a kohen should accomplish this feat. If there are no kahanim available, nichnasim levim. So second best, a levim. Ancient levim, if there are no levim available, nichnasim Yisraelim. So third tier are the Yisraelim. V'idi tahirin in tmein loy. But either way, it's meant to be accomplished by tahirin. We prefer sending a tar person in there rather than a tamei. Amar Rav Huna, Rav Kahana, who was a kohen, Messiah Kahani. He supports the kohanim. Because as we're going to see soon, he favors sending a kohen to do the job, even if the kohen is tamei, rather than sending a Yisrael who's tar. The Tanya of Kana, because Rav Kahana taught us a brisa. Mitech shenemar, from the fact that we see the pasuk says, this is regarding a Baal Mum, a kohen who has a blemish. Achal parechas lo yaved. The kohen should not approach the parechas. So the Torah says that a Baal Mum cannot enter, cannot do the avodah. Yachal lo yu kahanim bali mumen. Perhaps we can learn from here that even if the kohen is a Baal Mum, he can't even go in to do something else, to repair, to remove tumah. Yachal lo yu kahanim bali mumen nechnasen bein ulam ulam mizbeach. Perhaps they can't even go past the mizbeach towards the ulam lases rikuye pachim, to go ahead and repair, fix the gold-plated walls which were in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So perhaps even for repairs they can't enter. Talmud loyma ach chalak. The pasuk restricts the Baal Mum, but adds the words ach. The word ach is coming to split, to exclude. The Baal Mum cannot enter for the sake of avodah, to do service, but he can go ahead if he's needed to repair the rikuye pachim, these flat metal sheets, or any other infrastructure repair needed in the Beis HaMikdash. However, the preference is as follows. Mitzvah b'tmimim, we prefer sending in a kohen who's a tamim, who's suitable for avodah, and it really belongs there. Ein sham tmimim, however, if there are no tmimim available, then second best is nechnasim bali mumin. The ones with the mum can go in. Mitzvah tahirin, we prefer sending in a kohen who's tar. En sham tahirin, but if there are no tahirim available, and there's a pressing need to have this business attended to, nichnasim tmeim, so even a kohen tamei can go in, idi. But either way, kohanim in Israel, we prefer kohanim over Israel. So even if the kohen is tamei, he's considered to be in a higher position than a Yisrael who is tar. So if Kahana was Messiah Kahana, he supported and he favored Kahana. Okay, says the Gemara, now let's say we have a kohen who's a tamei. We have another kohen who's a Baal Mum. So they're both somewhat deficient, less than ideal. The question was, which one is preferred? Iboilu. So the Bnei Yeshiva posed the following question: tamei u Baal Mum. If you have a choice of sending in a kohen tamei or a kohen Baal Mum, which one's going to go in? We have a machlokes of Chia bar Ashi Omar Rav tamei nichlas. So he said in the name of Rav that we prefer the tamei. Why? The ha'ishtri b'avodas tzibur. Because let's remember that although a tamei cannot generally do avodah, but when it comes to avodas tzibur, the public karbanis, when there's no alternative, we know that even a kohen tamei can do the avodah. So a kohen tamei has limited access, theoretically has access to the Beis HaMikdash, therefore we prefer sending him in there over the Baal Mum who can never do avodah. Rav Lazar Amar Baal Mum nichnas. We prefer sending in the Baal Mum. Why? Because he has the ability at present moment in time, even when he has that moment, he can still go ahead and eat karbanis, eat kashim. So that's considered to be a connection to the Beis HaMikdash, and he is favored over the kohen who is tamei. So in summary, we learned that when it comes to coming into the heichal to fix or to take out a tumah, so we have a hierarchy as follows. First come Kahanim, second Bes Levim, and finally Yisraelim. Rav Kahana explained to us that a Kohen, even who is Tameh, is favored over these Levim Yisraelim. Likewise, a Kohen who is Baal Mum can go in for these purposes. And we're left off with a question, if we're faced with a choice of a Tameh or Baal Mum. The question is which Kohen to send in. One Shita says a Kohen Tameh is preferred, other Shita says a Kohen Baal Mum has precedence. Continues the Gemara. Reb Shimon Omer B'chulas. Reb Shimon concluded our Mishnah with a statement as follows. He said, wherever the Chachamim gave you the heter, it was actually yours that was granted to you. And he concluded with the words, they only allowed you in the case of Shvus. Now, this statement seems to be a bit cryptic, which the Gemara now will elaborate on. It says the Gemara, well, what's he referring to? Hasam Kai, it's actually in reference to the Mishnah over there, back on Daf Nun Beis. Tasnan, Mishehech Shechutz L'Tchum. If a person is traveling and come nightfall, Shabbos, he finds himself right outside this city's boundaries. Afilu ama achas. Even if he's just one ama outside the boundary, lo yikonis, he can't go on, meaning he doesn't acquire the boundary of the tchum of the city because he was outside the tchum at the onset of Shabbos. So even one ama creates that complication. That's the Tanakama. Reb Shimon Omer, afilu chamesh esrei ama yikonis. Even if he should find himself 15 amas beyond the boundary marker, he can still go in. He has for himself the tchum of the city. Why? Because the mishayches, these surveyors, they don't lay down their markers with exactness. They don't measure exact. They actually offset a bit. And they bring the tchum, the marker, which delineates the end of the boundary, they bring it in a bit. Actually 15 amas. You know why? Mipnei hatoim. For concern that people might inadvertently wander out of the tchum and end up out of the tchum. So they originally account for that and they offset the markers, they bring it in a bit to allow for that. Therefore says Reb Shimon, if a person should find himself 15 amas outside the tchum, you're meant to know that he's really within the tchum and there's no concern. The Ka'amatana Kamalei Konis. So Reb Shimon is responding to the Tanakam who said, even if he's one amma outside the marker, he can no longer come in. But Reb Shimon says he can, because technically he's still within the tchum. Continues the Gemara. So Reb Shimon first says, look, when the Chacham allowed you, meaning the reason why I allowed this person who's so far out of the tchum to come back in, because it's yours that they gave you. Chacham didn't grant you any new heter. It's really yours. You're really within the tchum. And he concludes with the words, now, what is this in reference to? Heicha Kai, what's it referring to? Hasam Kai, it's in reference to the Mishnah we learned earlier in the parak, concerning the Levi's harp that got damaged, so his violin or harp string snapped on Shabbos. The Tanakama Kaisha, Tanakama maintains that he can go ahead and tie the string, although that involves a malacha of kosher. He can do it on Shabbos for the sake of the klei shir, the instrument required for the korbanos. So that's the Tanakam who allows a malacha. However, Reb Shimon tells the Tanakama, no, you can only go ahead and form a bow which doesn't involve a malacha. Why? Only a bow which can never lead to a malacha, a chiv chatas. Only that would the Rabbanan allow, even in the Beis Hamikdash. However, kshira, to allow actually knotting the string, the asi l'dei chiv chatas, which can actually lead a person to do a malacha even outside the Beis Hamikdash. Perhaps inadvertently, he'll think that just as you can tie the harp in the Beis Hamikdash, let me do it outside as well. So since it can lead to that confusion and that pitfall, Kshir the Asli Dev Chiv Chatos, Lo Yishar the Rabbanan would not allow it. And therefore, I maintain that the only thing you can do is actually form that bow, because the Kshir can come to the Chiv Chatos, and Lo Yishar the Rabbanan, certainly Rabban did not allow that. And as Taisa explains Now I understand the connection between the two statements, two parts of a Shimon's statement. He says like this: my positions seem to contradict each other. On the one hand, I'm very lenient, I'm very makel when it comes to the tchum. This fellow finds himself so far outside the tchum, I allow him to come back in. And on the other hand, when it comes to the harp, I say, a knot? No. Only a bow, which doesn't entail a malacha. So here, I'm very machmer, here I'm very makel. How does that work? Says Reb Shimon, I'm very consistent actually. Because the Chachamim never took something which is asur and made it mutter. So let's explain. In the case of the tchum, although it seems that the Chacham are very makel, I allow him to come back from so far out of the tchum, that's simply because technically he was always in the tchum. Mishlcha naslcha. It was always a mutter. Because the actual boundary extended beyond the present markers. That explains the halacha there. And likewise in the case of the harp, Chacham would not allow something which is asur or can come to isser. Therefore, I insist that the only thing that was allowed, in the sake of the snapped harp, was the form of bow, which in itself is not a malacha, nor can it lead to confusion and to malacha. Hadron lo chamois tefillin, uslika lo mesechas Eruvin. Mazel tov, may we be zeicha to learn many mesechtas together in good health, b'simcha.